Hey, it's Honey Gregory, and have I got a treat for you? So recently I was interviewed by a great friend. She is a life coach. She is a radio personality. She does workshops. She's a really phenomenal friend and person who loves helping people. Her name is Ann. I love her. And she interviewed me. We did two interviews on two different occasions. And a little bit about my background and my book. And so I'm going to share that with you today. So we have part one and part two. And so let's start with part one and see where it goes. I hope you enjoy this. This was on her radio show, and she and I had just absolutely the best time. So, oh my gosh, here we go. Here's the interview. My friend Anne, who was the host of her show, interviewing me. So I hope you enjoy this.
Good morning, everybody. Coffee chat here with Ann Payton, and I have a very special guest. I've known this lady for a long time, and we really click. We share a lot of the same goals and callings, and she's just remarkable. So I want you to hear a little bit about Honey Gregory. She's a former actress. She is a divorce coach. She is an author, and she is a attorney. So I'm going to let Honey introduce herself with her additional credentials. Take it away, Honey.
Well, thank you, Anne. You're so lovely. I so appreciate you having me on here. You're such a doll. This is amazing and such a gift. And what you're doing is a gift to all the women out there. And like you said, because we have some similar callings on our lives that we've come together. Because you know what they say when you how you vibe is attracts your tribe. And I
I like
certainly
that.
feel, yeah, right. And so I feel like you're part of my tribe and you're a great resource to other women. And so I appreciate that introduction. But yeah, so I am Honey Michelle Gregory. So some people know me as Honey, some as Michelle. I guess I have a identity crisis or something going on here. But Honey Michelle Gregory, and I am a former actress. I was on television commercials and sitcoms and some small couple second spots in the movies back in the 80s and 90s. And one day I just said, "Oh my goodness, I'm not going to look good forever. I better get an education."
You go, girl.
you know, things start to fall south, and you're like,
Uh-huh.
maybe I need to think about alternative things to do. But during that journey in those early years, the reason I got into acting was something I always wanted to do, but I had gone through a really difficult marriage and I didn't have a lot of family support. So I went down my unhealthy path for a very, very long time that some of us women do when you don't have a good family support and, a mentoring team and
Mhm.
good friends to help push you along. And you know what I'm talking about. When you're a teenager, you're just flopping around if you don't have the right influencers around you. And, I got off on that wrong path and I married someone who wasn't very nice to me. Um, he wasn't the worst person in the world, but he wound up having some his own personal issues with alcohol and drugs. And so when
Mm.
I divorced him, I was a 22-year-old mom with only a high school education. And I didn't even realize it at the time I was dyslexic. So I could barely read or write. So the only jobs that I could get were waiting tables, working in a nightclub, bartending, dancing, uh, uh, working at the door, anything that I could do to put food on the table for my daughter. And but I got the opportunity to meet some really great people that were inspiring and who, and I had my grandmother too at the time. Still, she was still living, and that were inspiring to me, and they would push me, towards more positive things. And I did eventually go off to college, like I said, because you only look good in a swimsuit for so long. At least it's good enough for people to want to take pictures of you. And so the modeling career didn't go as far as I wanted. The acting career did not. I didn't want to move to Hollywood. So I decided to go back to school. But during that time frame when I was trying to go back to school, I was in a relationship with another man who was very abusive, very controlling, very manipulative. But I was young and it didn't click. I didn't get it. I just thought he was a guy and his behavior was just guy stuff. Little jealous, controlling, manipulative, those little
Oh,
tantrums, and you just
yeah.
think, oh, this is what a man is, if that's all you've ever seen. And so I dealt with it. And I was kind of a stubborn, hard headed kind of gal, Texas girl who wasn't going to take any baloney. And so I gave it right back to him. So we had some awful knockdown, drag out, horrible fights. And it was awful. And it was a long relationship. And parting from him was really difficult because he even continued to stalk me and cause chaos and drama and whatever. And it was awful. But luckily, after that, I met a really nice guy who was wonderful. And so I got to see what it was like to be in a relationship with someone who was fun,
Mhm.
interesting, um, who lifted me up, who said nice things to me, who didn't verbally abuse me, didn't cuss me out, didn't lock me out of the house or the hotel room or
Wow.
beat me up or call me names or accusing me of having intimate relationships with people that I never even met. And
Oh, man.
yeah, and he was super sweet. He just wasn't able to stay faithful because he was from another country and where he came from, having affairs was kind of a thing to do from Europe. And so it wasn't me. But I met him when I was in college because I had decided to go back to school, and that's where I learned that I was dyslexic. I couldn't read, I couldn't write. It was a really, really long, long, long challenge to get up to speed. I spent an entire year at the junior college just taking pre college classes. And I was lucky enough to meet a really wonderful professor, Professor Paget. Um, God rest her soul, but she has since passed. But on the first day of my English class, I went into class and she told everybody to write 3 pages on some subject. I think it was about ourselves. So I
Mhm.
wrote 3 pages. The next 2 days later, I went back to class, and mine looked like a horror movie. It was like it was red from one page to the next. You couldn't even tell what I'd originally wrote. It was so bad, and I about
Bloodshed.
cried. Right, I cried. I'm literally was looking at it going, oh my gosh, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid. I'm never going to get through this. I had this negative talk to myself because I didn't know any better. And on the top of the page, it said, come see me after class. And so I went to her office, and she's first thing she said to me was, are you dyslexic? And I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, I think you are. Let's have you tested. So she orchestrated the entire thing so I wouldn't have to pay for it. And I found out I was dyslexic, and as a result, I was able to get all kinds of help, additional time for testing, assignments, reading, writing, everything. And thank God for her because she set me on a positive journey. And without her doing that, I would have never been able to read or write, especially, I mean, I would have never even had the dream to write a book, a dream to even be on this podcast right now because I thought up until that point I was just some dumb bimbo blonde like everybody kept telling me and that I was never going to be successful at anything. Um that I was no
Goodness,
good.
she reached out to
Yeah.
you. I mean, thank
Yeah.
goodness there are people like that.
Yeah. She really lifted me up and gave me some hope. But I was worse than I even imagined because I didn't even know how bad I was bad at everything in life. But she was a great mentor and I'm really grateful for her. But as a result, I learned to read. I learned to write. I learned words. I hate to say it, but in my early 20s, my favorite words were 4 letters because that was about all I could read or pronounce. It was terrible. And, I grew up in a household where using bad language and not going to church was a common thing. So I just didn't have that quality of upbringing that some people are lucky enough to have. But I sometimes think that's what you need to kind of spur you on. Don't look at the negatives, don't look at your failures and your setbacks, look at them as setups for what's coming and keep on going. So I went ahead and enrolled in school and I did it. And she was there, my mentor, those 2.5 years, 3 years that I was there. I wound up graduating with honors, top of my class. I was on the student body. I was the president, student body representative. I wound up being a champion for people with handicaps. And all of a sudden, it was just once I allowed myself to accept the fact that I was handicapped, things just took off. Because I'm telling you, when someone says to, a young woman that, hey, there's something wrong with you, you're like,
Right.
this is not the kind of news you want.
Exactly.
And so I just was bound and determined at that point in time that I wasn't going to let this handicap hold me back. I would accept it for whatever it was. And I graduated with honors. I received a full ride to SMU. So the junior college that I graduated from, if you had a 3.5 or better, which I did, you automatically got 50% off of tuition. And it had been my goal to get into SMU. I remember driving past SMU years before and driving through the campus and saying, someday I'm going to go here. And people would laugh at me. You'll never make it to SMU. And
What's SMU? Which college is that?
Southern Methodist University in Dallas,
Okay. Thank you.
Dallas, Texas. Yeah. So, I had a vision. And even though other people didn't have a vision for me, I had to hold on to my own vision. So I would periodically, whenever I was in Dallas, I would go to Southern Methodist University campus and I would drive down the campus and I'd pull over and park and I'd go in the bookstore and I'd touch the books and I'd say, someday I'm going to be buying books here. And I would tell people, I'm going to go to SMU. And this is when I was in junior college. And people would just laugh at me, going, "You'll never get into that school. It's an Ivy League school. It's expensive. They only take the best of the best." And I said, well, that's me.
There you go.
I just decided that's me. That's who I am, and nobody's going to tell me different. And so I applied at SMU, and I did get accepted. And then they actually sent me a letter and said, "We would like to interview you for our presidential scholarship. We give away a presidential scholarship to one student a year who's come out of junior college, and you are on our short list." And I was like, well, heck yeah, I'm coming in there. So
Yeah.
I did. Sorry, I forgot my allergy medicine. So I did. I went and had my interview, and the panel was comprised of different people from the university department heads, and one of them was from the Department of Cox School of Business, and the other one was from shoot, what is it? The drama school. Can't think of the name. Theatrical school. And they were like, "Hey, we want you at our school." So I had department heads saying, "We want you in our school," because I hadn't declared a major yet. I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought about it and I thought, well, I really love acting, but I'm a mama. And I kind of had decided that I'm not going to get anywhere that I really wanted to go by acting. And the acting community, I know a lot of you probably have been watching the news lately. The entertainment industry is not a good place. So I feel grateful that the good Lord guided me and I didn't wind up going, because I wound up going to Cox School of Business and met some really great professors, a couple of nice lady professors there that I saw as a good role model for me, that I could do something. And Dr. Pinky Pinkney, she was my mediation professor.
Hmm.
And she was very successful, beautiful blonde woman. And I said, my gosh, if she can do it, I can do it. So, you got to put yourself around other people who are doing what you want to do so that you can see that it can be done. Because if you
Right.
can't imagine it, you can't do it yourself. So I just kept looking at these wonderful professors, these female professors, and I thought, I'm as smart as them. I know I am. So I just kept going. And by the time I finished at Cox, I had left, I graduated with honors from there as well.
Way to
Cum,
go,
yeah,
honey.
yeah,
Yeah.
cum laude, I think it is. Cum laude.
Yes.
Don't have my diploma here. It's at the office. But um, so I graduated and then I was like, well, this is something. What am I going to do next? So I still didn't
Right.
have that real understanding of who I wanted to be. So then I went off to Europe and I got my master's in international relations. And I was in Europe for 2 years. It was a lovely time. And then I was accepted to um, law school here at Bloomington, Indiana. It's the IU School of Law. That's what it was called when I was there. And I graduated there with pretty good grades. It was a little more challenging. My daughter was a teenager by then, and she was being horrible, as some teenagers are, or
Exactly.
making my life a pain.
Yeah.
But you press on, and I pressed on, and then I went out into the legal field, and I started helping people. And the very first clients that I was lucky enough to serve were women who had been abused, women who had been in really awful relationships and terrible things had happened to them.
Is that why you kind of went towards being a divorce
Mm.
lawyer?
Yeah. Well,
Or
so when I was in law school, I took a zillion classes, and I'll be honest with you, I found the law to be completely boring. It's just reading a lot of difficult words. And for a dyslexic person, it was like torture.
exactly.
Um, and so getting through it was just the challenge of itself. And still today, I have lawyers who are like, still make fun of me for being a lawyer. You're a blonde bimbo with used to be an actress. What are you doing being a lawyer? You're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. Well, sad for
Yeah, we
them.
we
Yeah,
rebuke
too
all of
bad.
that crap,
Yep, rebuke it
stinking thinking.
because they're obviously have issues, you
Hmm.
know, and they're not my problem. But you're going to run into that, right, wherever you go. But yes, when I was in law school, family law was fun. And I had been a divorced single mom who raised a
Hmm.
child with an ex. And so it was second nature to me. I was like, oh, I got the answers. So I was always debating the other kids in class because they're like 23, 4 years old. Most of them never been married. They didn't have a clue what it meant to have kids or raise kids or have a difficult ex. And so I wound up getting in a lot of debates. And then when I went out to start practicing, I got hired by a law firm here in town. I had a really nice boss. Wasn't a whole lot of room for advancement, but he gave me a whole lot of autonomy so that I could kind of learn my practice and do what I wanted. But my first clients were from the women's shelter. So Middleway House back then would send a lot of clients over to me, and they would have grants to pay just a teensy bit of their fees. But it was a good place to sharpen my teeth and claws, I guess you would say,
Yeah.
in the field because a lot of these women had been through awful things with spouses from name calling, control issues, jealous issues, sexual abuse, physical, verbal abuse. You pretty much name it. They'd gone through all of it. And what I started seeing was a pattern. And here was the crazy part, right? I had just recently gotten married at this time. And these women were coming into my office and they were going, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And I was like, aha moment, light bulb went off because I'm like, I'm dealing with some of the crazy stuff too. Why am I dealing with this crazy stuff too? And as my marriage progressed, the craziness just got worse and worse. And I was starting to read more and I was come across some really great books and I was reading a lot. And so I came across this one with the power wheel, the control and power wheel. And so women were coming to me and they were reporting constantly about physical abuse, um, sexual abuse, humility, um, medical abuse. And like some people were getting injured and not allowed to go to the hospital, you know?
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
religious abuse, telling them that because they are of a certain religion, they have to do what their husband says or they get beaten and stuff. People using their children, women that were being isolated, grown women told they can't leave the house. I mean, how ridiculous is that? A grown woman told can't leave the house, stalking. There was
Mm-hmm.
emotional abuse, threats,
Well, I'm sure they were
intimidation.
terrorized by
Oh,
all
it's
of it,
terrible. It's
you know?
awful. And
Yeah,
when you're in a marriage, a lot of women, because I run into a lot of Christian women in my practice, and property abuse, verbal abuse, the silence treatment. So I run into a lot of these Christian women who were coming to me and they were going, "Is this abuse? What they're doing to me?" And I'm like, yeah. And then the more I read and the more research I did and the more I looked into my own life and the men that I dated and was married to, I was like, oh my gosh, this is everywhere. Women don't even know they're being abused sometimes. I mean, yeah, if someone punches you in the face, it's pretty obvious, right? Or throws you in the bed and
hmm,
rapes you, it's obvious. But these little nuances, people were not getting that. And so when I got out of my relationship, I kind of dug back into my past and I was like, wow, this is crazy. So women started coming to me and saying, I want a divorce. Things like, I've never had a checking account, or my husband forces me to have sex, or I'm called these names all the time. I'm told what to wear. I'm told I can be friends with. They're using my kids they're teaching my kids to hate me. I mean, the list just goes on. And these women are
right.
like, but he's never hit me in the face, or something, and they're like, what happens if I get a divorce? Is God going to be mad at me? And so I had to research that myself, when I had gone through my divorce. And my
I did.
conclusion was,
I
right?
did too. Hmm.
Right. So you
Yeah,
feel guilty, you feel shame, like I'm getting divorced again
right,
in my case. Is God going to hate me? Am I going to go to hell? Is this going to be the end of my life? And that
right.
fear and that worry and that guilt, and that shame that you have can keep women in a situation they don't want to be in. And a lot of women with children are afraid to leave because they're like, how am I going to pay the bills? They don't know what to
Right,
do.
right.
So I started
Just so
writing.
you know, we
Yeah.
have about 4 more minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah, finish your story and then we will have you on again because I want
Oh,
to learn a little bit more about your book.
okay. Well, so as a result, women kept asking me, well, how'd you get through it? So I started putting together a list of scriptures that I used. And then someone would say, can I have a PDF of that? And then my PDF wound up turning into a book.
Wow,
So I will just hold off and share that with you. But I did come up with a book that's a devotional, a journal for women, so that they can see what scriptures are out there to help them navigate through a Christian divorce or escaping an abuser when they're Christians.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell
Yeah.
us, even though we'll be talking more about your book, tell
Yeah.
us the name of your book and
Sure.
where they can find it.
Right. So it's called This Is Not the Relationship That I Ordered. And we can talk about that later, why I picked that date. I mean, that
Yeah.
title. So, This Is Not the Relationship That I Ordered, Empowering Abused Women to Recognize, Strategize, and Win Back Their Lives with God. And it's a devotional journal. And I picked the color
Oh,
purple because that's the color that represents domestic violence.
okay.
And yeah, I really wanted to share with women some scriptures so that they could get out of it and not feel shame and guilt and get their lives
That
back.
that is so important. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you did that.
Thank you.
Where can they look up your book?
Well, it was published through Westbow Press. So Westbow Press, if you go to Westbow Press, I think it's westbowpress.com and put it in there that you can come up. I believe Amazon has bought some books from Westbow as well. And
Right.
you can Google it. And I think there's a lot of other stores that have bought some copies that sell on their sites as well. So
Wonderful. And
it's
is
out there.
it by Honey Michelle Gregory?
So I have H. Michelle Gregory on here
H.
for Honey
Michelle
Michelle
Gregory.
Gregory, but it's H. Michelle
Okay.
Gregory.
Okay.
Because when I'm practicing law, I go by H. Michelle Gregory. But I'm Honey. I'm Honey Michelle Gregory. So you'll find
Right.
me. It's not hard.
Yeah, I just want to make sure they
No,
can
that's
find
good.
you
Yes,
because
thank you.
and I just love devotional books. It's helped me through some bad times too. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
well, I would like to um Say thank you.
Thank you.
Your
Yes.
story is inspiring, and I know a lot of the women that are tuning in today will be inspired by that. And so I have to have you come back because I'd like to
Okay.
learn a
I
little
love
bit
that.
more about your
Absolutely.
book.
Okay, great. I'm
So,
all for it. Awesome.
all right. Well, audience, I am
Thank you.
signing off today with my special guest of Honey Michelle Gregory. But stay tuned because our next radio show will be about her book.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.